part. Small groups are a big part of life at St. John's. And we've done it in various iterations over the years. Some of the groups have been, if anybody was in a group called 4 years? Yeah, which were mainly social. Is that right?
Yep.
And so we've kept the social aspect of it, but we also have added, one of our main goals is also spiritual growth. So a small group is one of the best ways to form deep and lasting relationships within the parish. This is a big community, and if you want to get to know some specific people and really form deep friendships, this is one of the best ways to do that. And it's a time for mutual support and prayer, because the people in your small group are the first ones you would call if there's a death in your family, or if you want somebody to pray with you about a pending job choice. You could always call me or Father Lonnie, but you also have this group of people who know and treasure you to pray with you. And it's for fun and fellowship. If you know the people sitting here with me, you know these are a fun group of people. If you don't know them, get to know them. One of the ways we do the spiritual growth component is that each month I send out in advance a short reading. It takes about 12 or 15 minutes to read it. In the spring, a couple of the readings came from this book, Tattoos on the Heart, by Father Greg Boyle. He's a Jesuit priest in Los Angeles who has worked with, could someone close the door? There's someone talking on the phone outside. Thank you. He has worked with sort of repatriating gang members, helping young men and young women who are caught up in the life of gangs find a way to freedom, and find a way to living a whole and productive life. And so one of the ways he has to do that, of course, like any other ministry, is do a little fundraising. And so one of the readings I gave the groups last spring was he took a couple of these boys, he calls them homeboys, that's what they call themselves, homeboys, out to dinner. And these guys had never been to a restaurant with a menu or a restaurant that had waitresses. They'd only been to McDonald's. So they didn't know how to act, and they were dressed still in the gang style. So they stuck out, and they still had their tattoos on. They hadn't had their tattoos removed yet. They had, sort of outlandish hair. Everything about them caught the attention, and the restaurant got silent. And so these poor boys are walking across the restaurant with Father Boyle, and they sit down and they're feeling really uncomfortable. They don't know how to quietly whisper, "I'm going to the restaurant." They announce it so that the whole room knows that's what's happening next. But they get this fabulous waitress. When she comes up to the table, she puts her arm around their shoulders and she says, "I'm glad to see you." And she calls them honey and sweetheart. And she says, "You want another soda? Can I bring you some hot sauce?" She asks all the things. They never have to ask for a refill. She does all of that. And Father Boyle writes he can just see the boys relaxing. And finally they breathe deep and enjoy their meal. And he says about this waitress, she was Jesus with an apron on. And so the question that began the discussion in the small groups was, who has been Jesus in an apron to you? And that's the kind of discussion we have. It's not, there's no wrong or right answers. There are no entrapment there, but a way for you to explore yourself and your friends. And so with that, I want to introduce Johnny Hawkins. Johnny is going to MC this fabulous group of panelists and let y'all hear from them. Some are small group leaders, some are small group participants, and they'll tell you about their experiences and answer any questions you have.
Am I in the camera? Do they get it? My name's Johnny Hawkins. My wife, Darla Marsters, and I have been members of the church since 2020. We joined a small group last year, the coolest small group. Right. Jan and Emily Garrettson over there. Really before, we moved to Tallahassee in 2017. So before being a part of the small group, we were kind of trying to find a church home. But once we joined the small group at St. John's with Jen and Emily, it really drew us in. The community we experienced really brought us closer to God. All of the love and all of the things that we've experienced since joining that small group has really strengthened our relationship with God. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off by asking one of our panelists, Melanie.
Thank you.
How has small groups strengthened your relationship with God?
Oh, so we have to stand up. Forgive me, and I'm not going to be able to tell if I'm in the right place or not.
Got it.
And one of the things that always happens to me when I speak in a setting like this is I forget to say things. And forgive me because I get a little bit nervous. I think other people probably do too.
You're not alone. It's
I
okay.
was
It's not a
thankful
mistake
for
you.
that. I was in a small group with this year, and small groups evolve and change over time. So you'll have folks in one year or one season, and then they come and go, and they're each like their own little family or organisms. You know, people move in and move out. So one of the things that God does, that God spoke to me and Eric, my husband, about in this small group is that folks will come into your life for a season. And they come in to teach you something, and they're still in the church with you if they're not in your small group for that season. But for this season, for this year, we had the Askins with us, we had the Kibbies with us, we had the Proctors with us, and then a couple of folks floated in and out of the small group for a period of time. But one of the things that God did this year, we joined the church in 2018. So for those of you who know that there are some really deep legacy members here, and they, by osmosis, know things about St. John's and Tallahassee. We've been in Tallahassee since 2011. We have our readings and we had our books, but one of the things God met in me this year particularly, and I think it's true for Eric, was we rode off the farm. And that was one of the things that our small group had permission to do. And Charlie Redding and Martin Proctor in our group did a small group activity with us where we went around the church and learned all of the deep history of St. John's. You know how Father Lonnie this morning held up the book about he was learning the history. And we went, Lindsay unlocked everything, and we went in every nook and cranny of this church. But one of the things that happened during that small group activity we had in the spring was you could feel the Spirit moving between us, where it was a meshing of the legacy or the foundational families that just knew everything about the church. And those of us who felt a little bit younger and, you know, maybe we didn't know certain things and certain histories and certain stories of the church, and we all felt grounded together. And I think that's one of the things that small groups do, is it brings your tribe and it grounds you. And we felt no different than any of those other couples and families, and it helps you find your place. And I think that was what happened for us this year. So, and in other groups. And so now when we go into small groups this year, we feel like we're one of those folks that know the stories and can welcome others in. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Melanie. So speaking more on that, I mean, coming into the small group, Darla and I didn't really have friends in Tallahassee. So as far as, there may be some people that are reticent to kind of come into these situations, meet new people, but really not just our bond with Jesus, but our bond with the Tallahassee community was strengthened by these small groups. Because we didn't know anybody, and now we have so many friends that we can always call on whenever we need anything, and they're always there to help us, love us, and support us. Darla, can you please express what small groups has done for you?
No problem. Hi, everyone. I'm Darla Marsters, married to this guy, Johnny Hawkins. We were married a few years ago by Father Wallace, who's no longer here. He preaches up in Thomasville now. But we've just, we did our new membership class on Zoom. We kind of joined this church, and then right as COVID was still going, kind of in full stream. And so it's been nice to kind of come out of the COVID fog with everyone in Tallahassee and at St. John's. So I'll speak for a second about what it's done for, as he spoke on, what it's done for us as a couple is we were blank slates, fresh green, the greenest bananas in Tallahassee is what I feel like. We were super green. We didn't know. Besides, I have a handful of family here, and that's what brought us here originally. But, we left all of our friends behind, technically, in Oklahoma. So we were ready to kind of jump in and meet some new people that we could connect with and we could build roots with here in Tallahassee, because we were very excited to sit down, this is where we're going to be forever. So as a couple, it's been great because it gave us an outlet and a way to fellowship with other people who, of course, we try to find Jesus where we can, but we also need to solidify our, bond with Christ with other Christians. And so that was the coolest part. I think the reason that draws me to St. John's is in an Episcopalian church in general. I grew up in a Church of Christ, which is much, much more conservative. And so the coolest thing about St. John's is that you just want everyone to get together. The Episcopalians, you want to gather at the table, you want to be thankful for each other, and you want to be thankful for, Christ and God in your life. And we were searching for that. We were a bit lost when we first moved here. And then when we found St. John's, it felt like we found a place. You get to find your people. And so we signed up for small groups. We weren't sure what we were getting into. We didn't know, but I also think it was a relatively new program from what I understand. But it was cool because, well, Melanie, you talked about having like the Ackermans or like the Mannheimers too, right? So you had there's two sets of Mannheimers here now. There's multiple generations of each one. And so coming into St. John's, you do get to know what I call the lifers of St. John's. Some of the kids are, people or young folks that are our age, they were baptized here. They've been here forever. And that was cool, but like we were kind of intimidated by that. When you're walking into a congregation like St. John's, I'm sure you could feel kind of lost. But the coolest thing I think about St. John's is there's so many programs here that can help point you in the right direction, where you get to, what I say is you get to sprinkle in your Jesus however you see fit, whether that's serving at the church, whether that's joining a small group and getting to talk with people about a passage and getting to have a wonderful open discussion about what you see. In our small group, we do a thing called Joy Jump Jesus. So like as we go around the room and the way we catch up is we talk about where you've seen, the high point, the low point, and where you saw Christ that week. It's different for everyone, and not everyone speaks every single time. Sometimes some people just don't want to talk, they just want to listen. And I think that's also a cool part of small group. You get to indulge your social, skills or your capacities as much as you want, but also sometimes what sometimes we need or other folks need, we just need to hear, because you've had such a stressful week. And when it comes to going to church, getting to church on Sunday is one thing, and then when you're juggling careers and life and for some of our folks' kids, just getting to a place, one extra day a month, that's a journey all its own. And so once you get there, you want it to be a nice, wonderful, relaxed environment. And that was something that we found at the small group. So we got to also hear best part of encouragement for me was when I had days where I was just like having a rough one, but I wanted to be there. It was cool to hear how other folks, how the passage spoke to them, whatever the assigned reading was, or whatever their joy and their Jesus was for that week. Hearing how Michelle Mannheimer might find Jesus somewhere in her office, that encouraged me, like, I need to try and find Jesus in my office sometimes. I should try to search for that, because we're all on these different journeys, but also together. So that was the coolest part about small group to me, is that you get to walk your path, but you're not alone. You get to do it with others. So, sorry, I'm sure I went over my few minutes. I get to talking sometimes.
Thank you, Darla.
Okay.
Speaking a little more on what Darla was discussing, a really big part of small groups for me as well isn't just building community in Christ. It isn't just getting together with some of your friends. It's building real intimate relationships with the people around you and really being able to be with each other to strengthen yourselves in Christ. It's really a beautiful experience. And I encourage everybody here, everybody on Zoom, I should look at the camera when I say it, to really take part in this kind of an opportunity, because going to church every Sunday is great. But if you're not building your love for the community of the church, you're just not getting everything you can out of it, in my opinion. So Maggie, would you like to come up and tell us what you took from small groups?
Yes, I would be happy to. There's the camera.
Yeah, right.
I saw it when I was sitting here and then I moved over there and I lost it. So my name is Maggie, and I started as a small group participant and then was asked by Father Wallace to be a leader of a small group last year. And then it ended up, when you talk about intimate, we ended up being myself and 4 other people. They're not designed to be that small. That's just kind of what happened. Primarily women, primarily those of us, primarily millennial women. We did have one intrepid male FSU student who hung with us the whole time. But what small groups really meant to me was an opportunity to be with people in my life phase. So we were all single women, some of us because of divorce, some of us because just had not formed a partnership yet. And so we spent some time, yes, we discussed the reading, Angela, but we also talked about what does it mean to date as a Christian woman? What does it mean to kind of live those values into our lives? What does it mean to put God first in these areas where society is kind of not the nicest? And so that was really meaningful to me, not just in terms of like that one particular topic, but because I now have this sounding board. 2 of us bought our first house over the course of the year that we were together, and we talked about what that was like. What are your values about your house, and how do you navigate that through the real estate process? I also found my realtor through my small group, and if you need a recommendation, I got one for you. She is the best. So we got to celebrate those blessings with one another, and be there for the real stuff, the dating, the house buying, the parents getting sick. And that was really meaningful for me. And I think for the others in my group, we all lived alone. And so to be able to share that and bounce those ideas off each other in a way that was not judgmental, was open, was really an important thing for me. And all but one of my buds has moved on to different parts of the country, and so I'm looking for some new buds if I'm chosen as a leader in this.
So cool.
Thank you, Maggie. We appreciate you. I normally do a little segue between the speakers, but we're running a little shorter on time, and I do want to be able to open up for questions in the audience.
Oh, Debbie.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
I'm not doing a segue because Debbie, what is your experience with small group?
Well, hello, everybody. I led a small group that met entirely on Zoom, and thanks to COVID, I wanted to show you what that actually looks like in real life. Wow, I am huge on that screen.
Great, Debbie.
Yeah, okay, here we can have a generational cut. If I say incoming from the big giant head, who knows what that means? Nobody. Old show. No, I had a wonderful small group. I was a small group leader last year and had never been in a small group, but Father Wallace called and I said yes. And then was again this year, and it's really been a joy. Not to repeat others, but the formation of relationships that you build with the folks in your small group, the ability to get those deeper friendships, get that prayer circle, that circle of support. And I think that, in many ways, very much, at least in our group, facilitated by the readings and the responses to the readings, it really pushes you to get a deeper relationship with these folks than you would, meeting them just at church in an activity or something of that nature. Because some of the readings are quite meaningful, quite really cause you to reflect. And the comments of your other group members can give you really different perspectives on things. One of the things I really liked about my group is that we had a mixture of people from who came to the Episcopal Church from different faith backgrounds, as well as some members who had been in the Episcopal Church for quite a while. And so I think the blending of those different life experiences with scripture, with sort of the way the church works, was at least really meaningful to me. I took a lot from that. And then really want to thank the church and encourage the church to continue offering Zoom options, because it does give a way for folks who are not yet feeling comfortable returning to an in-person venue due to the COVID risk, a way to continue to stay connected. And it's also great for folks, which this is the reason I do Zoom, is because I have a family, because I have other things going on. It's just nearly impossible for me to get away and go in person somewhere, but very, very easy and meaningful, and something I'm grateful for, to be able to carve out the time to just jump on Zoom and spend time with wonderful people that I am so grateful to have met. So that's my experience, and I will turn it back to our MC and have some discussion.
Thank you, Debbie. So as she was saying, I mean, as far as finding the time to do it, that's kind of a small hurdle, but from my experience, the leaders of small groups will always work their hardest to make sure they can pick a time that's convenient for everybody participating in the small group. And I'll reiterate, it's a beautiful experience. I mean, having gone to church through life and everything, small groups were really the first time I was really able to build that intimacy with God, because there are so many like-minded people helping you grow in your faith. It's really wonderful. All right, I'm going to open up the floor for any questions that anybody might have for any of our panelists. If there's no questions, that's fine. Kathy.
I missed the first part. Was it that we do Bible readings and then socialize, or I missed what is involved?
The readings aren't necessarily Bible-based. So the example that Angela gave was, what's the title of the book, Angela?
Tattoos on the Heart by Father Greg Boyle. There's seldom a Bible reading. There's something else. We'll have a theme, which we'll let out soon, and try to. Some of the readings will really target one group of the church. If y'all remember back in January, we had some that were really artsy, and there were the people who were like, yes, and there were people like, don't give us that again. Everyone seemed to like Tattoos on the Heart. And they're short readings. They take 12 to 15 minutes. And I email them out, at the beginning of every month. And so there are people who say, no matter how early I get that, I'm not going to spend 15 minutes reading. We can read it when we get to the group. And there are people who read it and formulate questions, their answers to the questions. They're usually 3 discussion questions that are open-ended, like the one I gave you earlier. Who has been Jesus in an apron to you? And they get the first one is an easy entry question, and the third one is a little deeper, because that's the way a conversation naturally flows.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
Is there food?
That's a great question.
Small groups are enhanced by food. Elizabeth, who's on now that I can see, can reinforce for our group.
The first small group Darla and I went to was at Jen and Emily's house when they lived in Woodville. And they had a giant charcuterie board set out. So it really depends.
Was that the first one or the second one? That was the strawberries?
No.
It was the second one, because it was near Halloween, so I think it was the second one. Every once in a while we would, yes, our small group was a little different, I would say. I think because the first time we all met, like I said, we didn't know anyone except for maybe we had met 2 people maybe once. It was always like a provoking question. It was like, what's your favorite restaurant with wings in Tallahassee? And so like we became kind of a mini foodie group, but if we could, we would do something kind of potluck style. Around the holidays, we did like whatever we met in November, it was like Friendsgiving style, everyone brought a side. But no, food is not necessarily required, but like it was nice to, and I think our host did a good job of, they would do some stuff when they could, or they would ask us to chip in. Because that's also part of it. You're supposed to be able to be there to help and support each other even through these gatherings. So it might be someone brings, you know, some chips and veggies or chips and dip or a hummus platter or something like that. But not necessarily required, but it was nice because food always helps people relax, I think, so.
And if I can address as well, or do I really have to stand up?
Please, so it is.
Okay, I'm so sorry for being a nonconformist. We also did a hybrid where sometimes it was Zoom, sometimes it was real, sometimes it was both. And I don't mean real live, sorry. Also, we rotated hosting. And so if you were approached to be a leader for a small group, please don't think it always has to be at your place. We met in public, we met at the church, we met in people's homes. My group, thank you to everyone in my group, everybody was just falling over one another to host. So a lot of hospitality, and I think, again, it's Holy Spirit inspired that there's always hospitable people in small groups, and so great for that. But they are in all different shapes and sizes.
You'll notice every group says, my group was a little different.
Yes.
And that's true, every group was a little different.
I had a question about that. My group was all people in my age group, all women, and we met entirely on Zoom, which was really good for us. This is my first brave venture into a group setting since the beginning of the pandemic. Will there be, I know we wanted to continue, or the people that we were with wanted to continue with Zoom. Will there be Zoom options for, say, working people or people with young children that want to meet in the evening, but maybe don't have the time or the wherewithal to go somewhere to meet?
Yes, there will be daytime groups, evening groups, that on the registration form, which the registration form is at stjohn.org. There's a drop-down box for news and events, and the registration is there. And you can specify that. If there's, you know, somebody in the church that I just ain't doing a small group unless Jen is in my group, you can put that there.
And
You can put the name of a friend or, you know, somebody that you want to be in it. That's important, I think, for new folks, that you don't know a lot of folks in the church. Well, I know these 3 people, can I be in a group with them?
And Zoom will be a preference?
And Zoom will be an option.
I will say over our Zoom, the first year we did small group, we actually, because I like food, I don't know, we would do like a themed drink. So that we would all be, everybody would have the same drink, but we were still over Zoom, everybody's safety levels were still being taken into consideration, but we were all still in the physical spirit, drinking together. So, don't want to leave the Zoom people out, because I know it is important, and I agree that sometimes you're just busy and Zoom is the best option.
And that being, oh, I'm sorry, go
No,
ahead.
I'm sorry. No, how large do your groups get?
We try to limit them about 10. If you get over 12 people, it's, that's not small anymore.
Ours became 22.
Ours became, ours became large.
Some groups.
But that was because also it's not very traditional for some like members who join in the middle of small group season or in the middle of a yearly season at St. John's. But that was kind of my fault because I would brag about small group to these new members and then they would ask to join our group. So, which was great. It was wonderful, but ours did become a little larger than is easily maintained, yes.
I think we may have time for one more question. Is there anybody in Zoom that would like to ask a question?
How many people are talking on Zoom and are muted?
All right, so now I'm going to open the floor.
I have a question. When's the date that you have to be registered by?
August 31st. And then we're borrowing one of those tumblers that the lottery has, putting on, no.
Do we win a pot of money?
Yes, they're huge prizes, friendship.
A giant prize
Powerball.
of fellowship at the end of the rainbow.
All right, well, thank you, everybody, so much. I'm gonna turn it back over to Angela so she can close us out.
Okay, so remember you register at Saint, spelled out, -John, saint-john.org. There's a drop-down box, news and events, and there's small group registration. And you can email me if you have any other questions. You can come up here and ask any questions that are remaining. So thanks, everybody. Y'all have a good week. Bravo.
High fives, everybody, we did it. Nervous the whole time.
How are you?